The hotel loomed beside a deserted stretch of highway, its neon sign flickering in rain-slicked puddles that pooled beneath the night sky. No one ever came here by choice. This was a last resort kind of place, a shelter claimed out of necessity, never desire. Which was precisely why Daniel found himself here tonight. At 8:36 p.m., Daniel checked into room 318, clutching a single overnight bag. The receptionist barely looked up, her smile stretched thin and brittle as she slid the keycard across the counter with trembling fingers. "Enjoy your stay," she said, voice flat and hollow. Daniel muttered thanks and hurried toward the elevator, feeling the woman's eyes linger on his back long after he turned away. His wife believed he was away at a business conference. In truth, he was waiting for another woman, a living cliché, a man devoured by the same hunger he'd always mocked in others. Guilt gnawed at his insides all day, but now adrenaline and desire drowned it out. He convinced himself this was harmless, a fleeting thrill after 20 years of marriage, a secret night that would vanish come morning. What was one small trespass in a life of routine? Room 318 was indistinguishable from the hundreds of hotel rooms Daniel had endured. Bland beige walls, soulless artwork, and a television mounted across from the bed, all calculated to erase memory. Nothing to remember. At least it was clean. He unpacked, poured a stiff whiskey, and checked the time. 9 o'clock. Sarah would arrive soon. Outside, rain tapped a restless rhythm against the glass. Then, a strange guttural sound vibrated through the door. Not a voice, but something that sent a jolt up Daniel's spine. It came again, slow, pulsing, as if something not quite human tried to mimic a human sound and got it terribly wrong. Daniel smiled. She's early, he thought, a flicker of relief passing through him. He crossed the room and opened the door, only to find the hallway utterly empty. His smile collapsed, replaced by a chill crawling up his spine. The corridor stretched away in both directions, the yellow ceiling lights buzzing faintly. Not a soul in sight. Daniel stepped into the hallway and glanced toward the elevators. Empty. He looked the other way. Still nothing. A cold prickling crept up the nape of his neck. Maybe it was Sarah, he told himself, playing some childish game. But the silence pressed in, so absolute it rang in his ears. He almost welcomed the thought of noise, any noise. Feeling exposed, Daniel slipped back into the room and shut the door a little too quickly. He flicked on the TV, desperate for the safety of sound. A minute later, his phone vibrated. A text from Sarah. "Just got to the hotel." Daniel frowned. If Sarah had only just arrived, then what could have made that unearthly sound at the door? The thought barely had time to settle before it came again. The sound returned, quicker now, with a low, throaty growl, as if whatever was on the other side was growing impatient. Daniel stared at the door, still sitting on the side of the bed with the controller in his hands. Something about the noise unsettled him, a growling, feral persistence that felt hungry. He peered through the peephole. Still nothing but emptiness. The moment he turned away, the sound resumed, louder, more insistent, vibrating through the wood with a desperate, inhuman energy. Daniel backed away, heart thundering. What the hell is that? He grabbed his whiskey and took a gulp, the ice rattling against his teeth. With shaking hands, he snatched up his phone and began to type. "Sarah, is that you at the door? Stop it, it's not funny, you're scaring me." At 9:10 p.m., Sarah stepped into the hotel lobby. The receptionist barely looked up as she approached. When she stood in front of her, the receptionist's gaze swept over her with thinly veiled judgment, as if she already knew exactly why Sarah was there, and didn't approve. I'm expected in room 318, Sarah said. The receptionist nodded politely and pointed toward the elevators. Sarah thanked her and stepped inside. The elevator ride to the third floor was swift and soundless. When the doors slid open, Sarah stepped into a corridor lined with identical doors, the deep blue carpet swallowing her footsteps, the yellow lights casting uneasy shadows. Room 318 waited at the far end, door ajar. As she drew near, she saw the door was ajar, a black sliver of space splitting the frame. She didn't sense anything sinister. She figured Daniel was already expecting her, maybe trying to be charming or perhaps just eager and nervous, like her. The echoes of the receptionist's judgmental stare lingered, making her cheeks flush with guilt as she crossed the threshold. She pushed the door open and stepped inside, then closed it behind her without looking. Daniel? No answer. The room seemed empty, yet the air was thick with the lingering scent of cologne and stale cigarette smoke. Signs Daniel had just been here. His jacket hung over a chair. Wallet and keys were spread on the desk. An unfinished glass of whiskey sweated near the television. It was as if he'd only stepped out for a moment. Sarah sighed. Maybe he'd stepped outside to smoke, she thought. A slight anxious thought crossed her mind. Maybe he'd gotten nervous. Maybe he'd finally realized cheating on his wife was a terrible idea. But she quickly brushed these silly thoughts off. Then, turning, she spotted a phone lying face up on the carpet beside the bed. Daniel's phone. She picked it up. The screen glowed, displaying an unfinished message. "Sarah, is it you messing with the door? You're freaking me out." Sarah stared at the words. Confusion twisted quickly into dread as she checked the timestamp. "What the hell?" she whispered. The message had been written just moments before she arrived. Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her palm. A new text message. She opened it. It was from Daniel's number. It read, "Don't open the door," all capital letters. She stared, mind blank. It took several seconds for the meaning to sink in. The message made no sense. Daniel's phone was literally in her hand. Yet something in those words kindled a primal unease. Almost unconsciously, she crossed to the door and slid the security chain into place. The deadbolt clicked home. Minutes dragged by. Sarah tried again and again to send a message for help, but every attempt failed. No signal, no response. Then came a slow, inhuman moan, a sound that didn't belong to any person she'd ever known. Sarah froze. The sound was right outside. Ice spread through her chest. Her hands and feet tingled, numb with terror. The moan rose again, louder and closer, its guttural edge scraping at her nerves. It pressed against the door, as if the sound itself wanted to seep inside. The chain looked pitiful now, a flimsy barrier between her and whatever waited outside. "Who's there?" she called. No answer, only silence. Then, bang. The entire door shuddered. Sarah jumped back. Another impact struck the door. Bang, bang. The frame rattled. The security chain trembled. Something outside was now hitting the door with frightening force. Sarah stumbled backward, lost her balance, and crashed to the carpet. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped both phones. Scrambling, she grabbed the old-school phone on the nightstand and dialed reception, voice barely steady. The impacts continued. Bang, bang, bang. The chain rattled violently. After a few rings, the receptionist answered. "Good evening. How can I help you?" "There's someone outside my room," Sarah stammered, her voice trembling. "They're trying to break in." The receptionist turned toward the computer screen, her expression unreadable as she scanned the security camera footage. "I don't see any movement, ma'am," she replied, her voice flat and uninterested. For a second, Sarah could only stare, paralyzed, unable to move, unable to breathe. "That can't be," Something's outside my door, trying to break in, and it's not human." The sound cut off, plunging the room into sudden silence. Silence poured into the room, a deep, unnatural hush. After the pounding, every tiny sound became monstrous. Sarah crouched, breath barely moving. After a minute, she almost let herself believe it was over, that Daniel would emerge, grinning, or come strolling in from a smoke. Then her phone vibrated, so sudden and sharp her heart nearly stopped. An unknown number flashed on the screen. With trembling fingers, she hesitated, then took a deep breath and answered the call. Police arrived at the hotel just after 10:37 p.m., summoned by the receptionist when Sarah stopped answering the phone or the door. They found her sitting on the carpet beside the bed in room 318, eyes wide, lips parted, unmoving, as if she'd seen something no one else could imagine. She was physically unharmed, but utterly unresponsive. She didn't acknowledge the officers, the paramedics, or anyone in the room. Her hands, still trembling, clutched her own phone and Daniel's, knuckles white with terror. Daniel was nowhere to be found. Investigators initially considered Sarah a person of interest in his disappearance, but no evidence connected her to a crime. There were no signs of violence. Daniel's wallet, keys, jacket, and phone were found in the room. Security footage never showed him leaving. Despite exhaustive searches of the hotel and surrounding grounds, his body was never recovered. It was as if he'd simply vanished. In the months that followed, multiple attempts were made to interview Sarah, all unsuccessful. She never spoke, her silence as chilling as the events that had unfolded. The final activity on Sarah's phone was at 9:27 p.m., an incoming call from an unidentified number. Records confirmed she answered, and the line stayed open for 3 minutes and 43 seconds. Whatever she heard in those moments, she never shared. Investigators never determined who placed the call, nor what was said. The contents remain a mystery, just one more unanswered question in a case full of them. Sarah has never provided a statement. Daniel remains missing.